Alright, here we go. This is part 3 to what a female deku was muzan. Since the last one got so many likes, I will do a part 3 today, just this once, because I never usually do 2 parts of the same series in one day. Alright, so we'll open up with their first day at UA, with Miyu getting ready as she's walking to her door. Yorichi is there as they both begin to walk to UA. As Yorichi and Muzan are complementing each other, like complementing their fighting styles and all, and talking about ways they could refine and perfect their fighting styles. With Yorichi and Muzan discussing about this all the way to UA when they arrive at Class 1A. And once they get there, they see Ida arguing with Bakugo about him having his feet on the desks. As they're both looking around the room, Miyu see Mui or Mi? I think it was Miyu. Yeah, Miyu. Sees Kirishima and Mina, and notices that Kirishima's hair has been dyed red. As she walks over to both Mina and Kirishima, they both say hi to her, and once she turns around, she sees Momo. As Miyu gives Momo a very sinister glare, as she then looks back to Kirishima and Mina, as Kirishima and Mina ask her, why did she do that to Momo? As Miyu basically explained the whole fact that she was kicked out of the house by both her and her father. And Kirishima and Mina are just horrified that somebody would do that to their own sibling and their own daughter as well. And Yorichi would now Miyu is currently giving off a lot of murderous intent right now, as Yorichi would walk over, put his hand on her shoulder, and whisper into her ear, "You need to relax. If you keep this flowing, the teacher's going to pick up on it." As she listens to him and reels in all of her bloodlust, as Mina jokingly says, whispers, "So is that your new boyfriend?" As Miyu would get flustered and do that thing where they're putting their two fingers together, like they can't say anything. As Mina's eyes just light up, as a smile begins to creep across her face, as she says it is, isn't it? As her not responding and continuing that, it's all been confirmed for Mina and Kirishima, because again, they're not that dumb, so they can pick up on this stuff now. So Momo would be overhearing this and be jealous that Miyu, who to her is a demon, could get such a handsome guy like Yoriichi. As Momo would begin to plot something, as Aizawa would come in and say, "It took you all 10 seconds to shut up. This is not good for a hero school. I am Shota Aizawa. I am your homeroom teacher." As he then states, so tells everybody to get ready, as they are going to be doing a quirk assessment test. With Uraraka piping up saying, what about the orientation, yeah. With Aizawa saying that this is my class, I do whatever I want, and we don't have time for that because you are heroes in training. As Miyu and Yoriichi would just stand up and head down to the changing rooms as Miyu is getting changed. Everybody notices that she doesn't have like a muscular build, but she isn't skinny. She's sort of like an in-between. As a lot of the girls, including Momo, actually a lot of the girls would be surprised by this, but Momo would just be angered that her sister looks physically stronger than her. As Miyu would hear Mineta whispering, saying that there's a hole in the wall and it leads into the girls' changing rooms, with her quickly shifting a part of her body into the combat mode, with the bone tendril sticking into the wall, basically blocking that hole. As Mineta would wonder why can't he see anything, and Yoriichi would basically grab him by his shoulder. And you know that look he had in the anime when Muzan remembered back to when he told those two demons to go and kill Tanjiro? He's giving that look to Mineta. The one where it's just like a no like pupil glare. Which Mineta is terrified by, as he stops looking in the hole as he continues to get changed, along with Yoriichi. And Miyu and Yoriichi are the first ones to be done, so they head outside. As Aizawa would then toss the ball to Miyu, stating that she got first place on the entrance exams, so she's going to throw the ball. With Bakugo saying, "What? I thought I was first in the entrance exam. Not this freak," as he points to Miyu. As she states, "Well, we all can't have what we want, now can we, Katsuki?" As at this point, Bakugo hasn't even told her his name, as he is freaked out by this, and so is everyone else. Because Bakugo didn't even talk to her, and she already knows she already knows his name. As when she gets up to the plate, like the circle, she then turns into her combat form, which everybody's surprised by. And if I remember correctly, Muzan's combat form basically boosts his physical abilities to twice as much as they are. As she would throw the ball, and she would get around 17,000 meters. With as I was showing this, and Momo and Bakugo being infuriated with as Miyu walks past Yoriichi, he says, good job, my love," as she whispers back, "Good, thank you and good luck." As they would go through the other tests with Miyu doing the speed test with her beating Ida and her getting it basically 0.0001 seconds. As she would also basically crush the strength test, destroy Mineta in the side-to-side jumps, and beat everyone else at the long jumps. With the only one that she couldn't get better at was the ball throw with Uraraku Infinity. And as the score that I brought up is shown that Miyu is in first place and Yoriichi is in second, due to Yoriichi still having the Demon Slayer mark on his head, but this one it won't shorten his lifespan. Because I remember he could live up to about 80 years old. He was about 80 when he died, so it's probably going to have the same effect on him. He won't die for about the age of 24, I believe. So, Miyu and Yoriichi are happy that they got the top scores, as Momo and Bakugo are both enraged by this, as then Mineta is in last place, as Aizawa then states that, that was all a logical ruse, none of you are getting expelled. As everybody was surprised by that. Now, Momo didn't figure this out, like she did in canon, because she was too enraged at the fact that her younger twin sister was a lot better than her in this. And despite the fact she was quirkless. As Yoriichi and Miyu had figured this out a while ago, which is why they thought that they should have said something, as their day would go on as normal, as Yoriichi would end up walking Miyu home to her apartment, with her thanking Yoriichi for walking her home, as she would then head into our apartment and basically get everything she needed to do done for that night. Now, and then we get to the next day with the heroes versus villains training, with Yoriichi and Miyu sitting next to each other as they're both talking about what kind of hero training would they be doing today, as they hear something coming from the hallway, as All Might bursts through the door stating, "I am here," coming through the door like a normal person, with Miyu and Yoriichi being surprised, caught off guard by this, so they both kind of jump, as Miyu's hair does turn white, but she didn't shift into her combat form, as she sees that was just All Might, as her hair turns back to its normal black. With Yoriichi, with All Might stating that heroes saying what he did in canon, as he brings out the briefcases that has everyone's hero clothing in them. Now, Yoriichi walks out in sort of the same stuff he was wearing back when he was a demon slayer in his past life, as everybody would find it quite interesting that Yoriichi would be wearing something like that, because it doesn't really seem that flashy, as he states that it's a lot more practical because it allows them for a lot more movement. As Miu would basically walk out in her combat form with like all the now I don't think if I stated this before, but all the mouths are shut in her combat form, so it looks like they're just spikes there. As Mineta is just literally perving over her as he go and try to, like when nobody else is looking, he would go to try to grab Miu's boobs, but a mouth opens and like goes to snap at him, which Mineta pulls his hand away immediately, and he is frightened by. As everybody would also notice, Mineta is freaking out as the mouth on me, like as the mouths over Miu's body would begin to open up, as everybody would be a bit shocked by this, as Bakugo would whisper would say under his breath that I knew it, she's a villain. As actually says this in his head, as Miu would walk up to Bakugo and say, I'm a what, Katsuki? Go on, say it again. I'm listening. As Bakugo would think, how the hell did she know what I'm saying? As she would respond with, oh, it's just a little bit of telepathy, nothing new. As everybody would be scared that she can read their thoughts, and Yoriichi would just be laughing his ass off in the back as he said, oh, I've known she could do that for a while. In fact, that's the first thing she did when we met. We literally had an entire mental conversation when we first met. As everybody would be freaked out by this. As we then get to the ballots, as Yoriichi and Miu would be put on a team, as Momo and Bakugo would also be put on a team. So it'll be Miu and Yoriichi versus Bakugo and Momo, with Miu and Yoriichi being on the hero team and Bakugo and Momo being on the villain team. As Bakugo and Momo would head into the building and place the bomb down, as Momo would then put up precautions to try and to see what, as she would put up things like sentry guns, and basically equip herself with what appears to be a rocket launcher, and a few assault weapons, with Miu and Yoriichi sneaking into the building. As Miu would say that Bakugo would probably come for the both of them, so it's best if we both stick together to take him out. As right on cue, Bakugo comes around the corner, but Miu just basically backhands Bakugo as he goes through a wall. As Yoriichi would then pin Bakugo down and put the capture tape on him, as Ame would announce that Bakugo Katsuki has been captured. As Momo would think, he got captured that quickly? I knew it, he was useless. As Yoriichi and Miu would make it up to the fifth floor, as Miu would open up the door, she basically gets lit up by gunfire and is hit by a missile, which she is heavily injured by. But she then, she is bleeding. She does have quite a large amount of holes in her, and is bleeding profusely, which Alma is about to call this off, as Miu begins to stand up, basically cracking her neck and basically taking out all the bullets, basically stating that that's not bad, but But if you're going to use something like that to try and fight a villain, that's not really that heroic now, is it? As she would basically charge at Momo and basically grab her by the throat and chokeslam her into the ground, as Yorichi would touch the bomb, with the hero teams winning. As All Might would ask everyone who was the MVP of that match, as they would all say that it was Miyu, as she had effective countermeasures to everyone and could basically read their minds to know what their plans were. As All Might would state that is correct, that as a hero you need to use everything in your arsenal to know what your enemies are going to do and what they have planned. As Miyu would basically go back into the changing rooms and basically change back into her normal clothing, like her uniform, as she would then get out of her combat form with her hair returning to black. As Mina still finds that very cool, even though she's been hanging out with Miyu for years, she still finds it very cool that she can basically change her hair color. And all the other girls, except for Momo, are like asking her on tips on how to be a better hero. At this point, everybody who was watching that fight between Miyu and Momo found it a bit iffy that Momo would have set all that stuff up just to defend the bomb, and that if Miyu didn't have that regeneration ability locked in, she would have died from it. So everybody's feeling towards Momo, except for Bakugo, would be a bit on the negative side. Now, just here's the thing, some of the girls are a bit jealous of Miyu for having Yorichi, for like hanging around Yorichi, and all the boys are jealous that Yorichi is hanging out with Miyu. A lot of the boys, mainly Mineta and Denki, are jealous that Yorichi is hanging out with such a beautiful girl like Miyu, and all the girls are jealous that Miyu is hanging out with a handsome guy like Yorichi. With them both headed home, as they would then basically end their day off there. Miyu actually asked Yorichi if he could stay over the night, since they've been dating for a couple months now. As Yorichi agrees to this, as she basically sets up a sleeping area for Yorichi. Now the couch that she has is sort of like one of those couches that can fold from a couch into a bed. So she has that set up for Yorichi. As Miyu and Yorichi are getting ready for bed, Yorichi accidentally, Miyu is taking a bath in her bathroom, and Yorichi, not knowing that Miyu was in there, accidentally walks in and sees Miyu in the bath, and Yorichi was getting ready to go for a bath as well. So Miyu and Yorichi see each other, as Miyu immediately shifts into her combat form, as Yorichi would basically run out as three bone spikes who basically slam into the wall that he was just behind him. As Miyu would shift back into her normal state and basically sink underneath the water, as she would be embarrassed as she would get out and tell Yorichi that Yorichi in an embarrassed tone that the bathroom was free, as Yorichi would walk in there and do his thing. With basically Miyu and Yorichi being awkward to each other the entire night, with Yorichi basically breaking that awkward, breaking the silence, saying that she did look nice, so as Miyu would say the same to you, as that's where their night would end off. As I will begin to cover a little bit of the USJ, as they are in the bus. Sue begins to start asking questions about Yorichi and Miyu's quirks, as Yorichi says that his quirk is called sun breathing, and that he can basically use the power of the sun into his attacks, which is why they always have that flaming effect. With Miyu stating that her quirk is called Demon King, and that she has two forms, her normal form and her combat form, and that her combat form is twice as powerful as her normal state. She also has access to shape-shifting and manipulating her body to the point where she can look completely different if you want to. With her giving a demonstration, as she would make herself look like Yorichi, as she would then shift back to her normal state, but does use up a lot of energy, as she would basically, now Yorichi and her are sitting next to each other, so Miyu would basically put her head on Yorichi's shoulder as she would take a quick nap. Then we'll get to once they get to the USJ, they arrive and 13 gives her little speech on how quirks can be dangerous and that they can kill people if they aren't used properly, as the League of Villains would end up showing up, stating that they are here to kill All Might. As I would say to 13 to protect the children, he would basically charge in and begin to fight with the villains. As this would basically allow Miyu and everyone else to basically try to get out. But like in canon, Aizawa loses sight of Kurogiri, as he would then warp up and begin to send them all to different locations, with Miyu being sent to the water zone, and Yorichi being sent to basically staying where he was, as Yorichi would go down to try and fight the villains with Aizawa. Miyu is currently coming up with an escape plan for her Asui and Mineta, as she states that she has a plan, but they're not going to like it, as she would basically state that one of her forms basically looks like a giant demonic baby, and she could basically take off a piece of her flesh and basically use that as a distraction as they make their escape. As Sue and Mineta state that's a great idea, as Miyu would then shift into... Now, Miyu is already in her combat form, so she would basically cut off this arm right here, like from the elbow, where the elbow is, as she would basically then toss that arm into the water as it would begin to turn into the giant baby demon form that Muzan took in the manga. As they would use that as a distraction, as Fu and Mineta and Miyu would make their escape, with, as soon as they land, Miyu's arm regenerating immediately. As once they get to where they were, they see Aizawa is severely injured, along with Yoriichi being held by the Nomu, like by the neck. As Miyu would see this, as she would be immediately enraged and charging at the Nomu, severing its arm and putting Yoriichi down. As she would then state that they tried to hurt her Yoriichi, and now they're going to pay with the bone tendrils stick coming out from her back, as she would basically end up blitzing towards Shigaraki with an intent to kill, as the Nomu would block her, but her hand would go right through the Nomu, but she would be stuck there, with the Nomu basically grabbing her arm and ripping it out, as it began to lift her up, with Miyu using her bone tendrils to stab the Nomu, as Shigaraki would state that it's no use. The Nomu has shock absorption, regeneration, and super strength. This thing was made to kill All Might, as Miyu would then state. So this was made, huh? Guess I don't need to hold back then. As her eyes would then begin to glare red, as she would basically rip off both her hands, as they're stuck still in the Noma's grasp, as her hands regenerate, as she would then basically elongate her nails and stab the Nomu right in the neck with her nails like a grasping motion, and basically pumping some of her blood into the Nomu, as the Nomu would begin to scream out in pain, as it would basically turn into a meat puddle. Sort of like how Muzan's victims, if his blood was rejected by the body, they would turn into meat puddles. As Shigaraki would begin to scratch his neck, stating that she cheated, as he would then go to grab Muzan and end up grabbing her by the top of her head, as Muzan, in a quick move, would end up decapitating herself to prevent the decay from decaying her body, as Shigaraki would then begin to laugh maniacally, stating that one of the most powerful people in UA is dead, as he would then crush her decayed head, as Shigaraki would then begin to laugh more maniacally, as Miyu's body would begin to stand up, as her head begins to regenerate, as it then fully regenerates with her hair going back to its length, as she would then say, "If you thought that would kill me, then you're a pretty bad villain." As she would then she would kick Shigaraki in the side of the head, which would send him flying into Kurogiri, as Kurogiri says to Shigaraki that we need to retreat, as he states that states fine, but this isn't over, as both Shigaraki and Kurogiri would warp away, with Miyu running over to Aizawa and Yoriichi, as she would check both their pulses to see that both of them were fine, but they will need to get to the hospital, with Miyu with Miyu going with Yoriichi, as Miyu would be at the hospital with Yoriichi for a while, as Yoriichi would wake up, as his injuries were more minor than Aizawa's. Yoriichi was let out of the hospital that same day, as Miyu would then take Yoriichi to her place, as she would look after him, like dealing with his injuries and all that. And that is where I'm going to leave it off. I do hope you guys enjoyed this, and I did not expect this video to be up to about 35 minutes long. So I will see you guys next time with part 4 to What If Female Deku was Muzan, and part 3 to What If Female Deku was Tanjiro. And don't worry about the other what ifs, I will get those continued.